This episode of Bartholomew Town is brought to you by the University of Rhode Island Online, Newport Film, Navigant Credit Union, Half Street Group, and Health Source RI for employers.
Bartholomew Town.
Hi, everybody. Welcome into Bartholomew Town. I'm Bill Bartholomew. Some new polling data in the Rhode Island gubernatorial race released today. And I think it's pretty interesting and also not very surprising based on kind of the common sense evaluation of where this race stands. The common sense evaluation of what you would assume is public perception of some of the major candidates. And when we talk about the candidates, we're also talking about those who are not announced yet. And that is a significant notion, particularly for Governor McKee, as I'll explain it in just a moment. This is a University of Rhode Island Harrington School of Communications poll titled Housing and Governance in Rhode Island. I'll give you the big takeaways and offer a little bit of analysis in terms of what this means going forward. Now, I also think it's worth noting, look, when it's April of the year before an election year, so like April 2025, or even August, right? August of any year, frankly, here in Rhode Island, people are on the beach, people are checked out from most of the major news stuff, at least as much as they're going to be, even if you're a news junkie. You're talking about a different conversation than you are when you're in the zone of post-Labor Day a year before an election. This is it, folks. We're in. And as such, our coverage, our sort of work product, if you will, is shifting. I feel that myself. I feel like, okay, this is it. The political season is underway. I'm not saying that Helena Bonanno Folks, who announced that she was going to be seeking a second effort to become governor last week, I'm not saying that that was the kickoff. Certainly when Governor McKee earlier this year announced that he was going to be running for re-election, that was definitely not the kickoff. It just feels like now we're kind of post-traditional summer and into a moment where Rhode Island politics on the whole, local politics in general, and particularly this governor's race, it's time. It's time to start thinking about it with a serious level of perception. And kind of going forward from here, it's not that it didn't matter before what candidates or potential candidates said or didn't say, or how they dodged questions about whether or not they were interested in running, whether they were reporting significant fundraising results, anything like that. It's not that it didn't matter. Of course it mattered. It's just now it really matters. Now it's starting to feel like, okay, here we are. This is it. Let's get down to business. So let's get right down to business in terms of the results of this poll. Dan McGowan has a really good summary of it in Roadmap this morning. Make sure you subscribe to Roadmap from the Boston Globe. You get a great analysis and kind of news overview every morning on that which is happening here in Rhode Island. Speaking of which, McGowan will join me tomorrow on the podcast as we break down the Providence mayoral race. Big news today in that regard, as David Morales, no stranger to our audience here on Bartholomew Town, State Representative Morales has announced that he's going to be primarying Brett Smiley. And a lot to get into there. Morales definitely, no doubt about it, no matter how he tries to frame his campaign, it won't just be perceived as, or it won't be at least distributed by, media, certainly the Smiley campaign, traditional Democrats, and even Republicans. It won't be distributed as, hey, here's a progressive. I mean, they're going to say this guy is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and they're going to do everything they can to paint him as Rhode Island's Mondami. Of course, the major difference here in Rhode Island and the major difference in Providence is that the demographic base, which got Mondami across the board, and also the competitors in that race, you think about Eric Adams in New York, just a wholly unlikable figure, as proven by his standing right now in all polling related to the New York mayoral race, the incumbent in fourth place behind kind of a maniac Republican guy and Andrew Cuomo, of all people, Mondami, dominating that race. But a totally different coalition, a totally different set of demographics here in Providence, and a different game. Winning Providence is a very different game than winning New York. It's something that Smiley has done very well in terms of courting some of those key blocks of voters, particularly on the east side, right? So it's a totally different conversation, and we're going to get into detail on that tomorrow. Again, Dan McGowan of the Boston Globe, he'll join me here on Bartholomew Town. We'll go all the way on discussing the Providence mayoral race and what could be an interesting scenario. Do I think Morales has a shot? Yeah, I do think he has a shot. I think that there's something there to chew on. It's not some kind of outsider nonsense campaign, that's for sure. Do I think Brett Smiley looks at this and says, Okay, we've got work to do, but it's not panic mode. Absolutely. So that's that. That's the Providence mayoral race. We'll get into that coming up again tomorrow. For now, though, this governor's poll that came out, that the URI poll. Now, noted in Roadmap this morning, and I think it's really important to state this right out of the gate, is last year, and all the recent polls, McKee has done terribly. I mean, he has polled awful. And you can attribute that to Washington Bridge malcontent. You can attribute that to maybe other issues that some of the potential or actual opponents have beaten him over the head on. You think about Nerona beating him over the head over the last year plus on healthcare and the healthcare crisis in this state. You think about the housing crisis and Speaker Shekarchi and the suites of legislative action that he's introduced indirectly in some ways, I think critical of the McKee administration by just virtue of trying to become the housing czar, if you will. All of that is true, and I think all of that has fed public perception. And for an incumbent governor to poll so either low or to have a scenario where there's so much space of whether it's you're looking at the disapproval ratings or just the indifference ratings. You know, when you have a high volume of people who are indifferent when they're polled, that says something as well. Yeah, I don't know. Either one, they're not paying attention, or two, they're paying attention. They're like, I don't know, man. Like, geez. I mean, are these really my options? Is that really where I have to go? So this latest poll, the URI poll, a year ago, when the same poll came out, McKee did pretty well relative to every other poll that has been released. He was over 50% approval in that URI poll. And he would often complain when people would note his polling position that they were leaving out the URI poll. And I think that that's kind of really important to note here, because now McKee, in this very same poll a year later, the URI poll, is performing pretty badly. So McKee's job approval rating here at 29%. That's down 26 points from a year ago, where he was sitting at, we'll do the math, 55%, right? Simultaneously, he's got a disapproval rating of 37% and 34% saying they're not sure. I mean, that's a lot. That's a real lot of people. It's not like McKee was elected last week. I mean, he's been around. He's been touring the state, the whole 39 cities and towns tour, the whole attendance matters thing, and sort of the Rhode Island 2030 plan. He's had a chance to give numerous state of the state addresses. He's had a chance to be in front of the state on a very frequent basis. And there's no doubt that his name recognition would be very strong. All right. So there's that. And it is surprising, I think, to see a 34% say they are not sure, because when you just get a flavor of the moment, I feel like McKee is very polarizing. There's some people who feel like he's been dealt a very bad hand, particularly with the Washington Bridge, particularly with Peter Alviti, the director of the Department of Transportation, who went on a freelance tour on the radio and TV, particularly in the months right around the closure of the Washington Bridge, and just kind of freelanced and left McKee hanging out to dry. And it seemed like there was just a complete disarray scenario, right, when it comes to the Washington Bridge. So McKee dealt a bad hand. At the same time, you can't say that they've done an amazing job of soothing Rhode Islanders' concern about infrastructure, right? So there is that. Here's the thing. What this poll also shows is that Helena Bonanno folks kind of has a long way to go, even though she's got the money, even though she's got a core group of people that are, maybe it's the Raimondo administration sort of residual support. Maybe it's just the business class in general. Who knows? You can frame it a number of different ways, but she definitely has a block that is going to be decidedly hers. I don't care who else gets into this race. I don't care if Gina Raimondo gets into this race again. I think some people would say Folks is the new Raimondo, and we want to go that direction. But she's got a long way to go as well. And the whole thing here, if you're Dan McKee right now, on September 15th, just under a year before a Democratic primary, what you're looking at here is you're hoping more people get into this race, and it is not that one-on-one battle with Helena Bonanno folks. This poll asked the question, or posed the question, of a hypothetical four-way race. And I'm going to give you another stat on this that is pretty critical as well when it comes to this four-way race. And I'm also going to tell you the three things that Helena Bonanno folks has got to do this time if she actually wants to get across the finish line in the Democratic primary. So here's that four-way race. McKee has a dominant lead over the hypothetical four-way Democratic primary. He's got an 18.5% lead over Attorney General Peter Neronha, who sits at 15%. Neronha has made no indication that he's getting in. He's not been active really on a fundraising level, but there's no doubt he has indicated for on a soft level, right, that he enjoys the work of Attorney General. Sometimes he said he definitely wouldn't run for governor, and then he thought maybe he's going to run for lieutenant governor, kind of pair up with Helena Bonanno Folks. Then, maybe he's going to run for governor because he's not going to pair up with Helena Folks. It's been very uncertain where Neronha sits. But I think Neronha has built a coalition of his own, which includes some progressives, particularly on the environmental stuff. He's built a lane of, this is kind of weird to say, but like a law and order lane, if you will, where I think there's some people who are on the conservative side that look at him and they say, not necessarily MAGA diehards, because Neronha is suing the hell out of Trump, but, sort of that moderate conservative lane. They probably look at Neronha and go, okay, that's a guy that I can get behind. He's actually the leading, but slightly leading challenger to McKee in a potential four-way race. Then you got Bonanno Folks. She sits at 14.3%. And then Joe Shekarchi at 7.3%. Now, here's the thing about Shekarchi. Shekarchi, his optimal scenario would be other people get out of the way. Who are those other people? One would be Dan McKee. He would love it if Dan McKee said, I'm going to retire. I'm going to serve out my term. I'm going to do the best I can here for the rest of the run. And I'm going to fade off into the sunset. I'm going to play golf. I'm going to be remembered, the Washington Bridge, but I'm also going to be remembered from some of the educational stuff that I did. And I did a great job with COVID vaccine distribution, picked up when Raimondo kind of just popped out of town. Shekarchi wants that. And Shekarchi does not want to challenge from a party politics standpoint and just from a general standpoint. Doesn't want to challenge McKee. So he'd love it if McKee said, I'm not seeking re-election. Shekarchi would also love it if Jack Reed said, I'm going to retire. A lot of people see Shekarchi as more of a senatorial, is continuing in a legislative body standpoint. All right. So he would love it if both of those people retired. That just does not seem to be the case. We're going to get into a conversation pretty soon about just in general what I think is a desperate need in change of leadership across the board in our Rhode Island media political infrastructure. And when I say that, I mean people in the media. I think people in politics. I think people in appointed positions. I think people in the judiciary. I think we really are in desperate need of a shift in generational leadership. And it's kind of contingent on either leadership of organizations and voters making bold decisions, or people saying who are in elected or appointed or hired positions saying, okay, I'm going to hand over power. That doesn't seem likely. I think that's what we need. Shekarchi is kind of he's certainly not he's not going to be shopping at Urban Outfitters this weekend, we'll put it that way. But the guy definitely feels a little bit more youthful than some of the other people that are in those, certainly than Reed or McKee, no doubt. But Shekarchi, in spite of the fact, number one, he's got a ton of money. I mean, the guy has got a huge amount of, last time I checked, he was well over $300,000 in his, well over $3 million in his campaign account. And Speaker of the House, based on our governmental setup, is the most powerful position in Rhode Island government, right? At the same time, 7.3% in this poll shows you that nobody has any idea who he is. And for sure, if you went out on the street right now, I don't know, you go stand on Hoxie Four Corners, wave cars down and say, who the hell's Dan McKee? They're going to tell you, most people are going to say he's the governor. You say, who the hell's Joe Shekarchi? Hoxie Four Corners, you're in Warwick, so you're going to get a little bit of a boost for Shekarchi because that's his hometown. But most people aren't going to be able to tell you who he is. And I think that is a big deal, all right? Now, here's another big deal. Nearly 41% of respondents in the hypothetical four-way Democratic primary race between McKee, Neronha, Folks, and Shekarchi said they weren't sure.
Bartholomew Town.
Are you ready to take the next step in your career? URI Online offers business and leadership-focused programs designed to fit your life. Whether your goal is to advance in your career in fields like public administration, supply chain management, or training and development, Their online programs provide the flexibility you need with the high-quality education you deserve. Learn more from experienced faculty and collaborate with a network of professionals, all from the comfort of your home or wherever life takes you. Visit uri.edu/online to explore programs and start building your future today. URI Online. Learn anywhere with us. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,200 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our more than 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health and dental insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.
We're brought to you in part by Newport Film. Make sure you check out their indoor film screening series by visiting newportfilm.com. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. That is wild. Again, we're just getting into the season. Happy autumn. It's not autumn. Happy end of summer. Happy transition. Welcome to Rhode Island political season. Get your merch. Get your back to school clothes on, and get ready to plug in for the next year because this thing's going to be interesting. Still, the fact that that is unbelievable. Well over a third of respondents said they don't even know who they'd vote for governor. That shows you that I think this race is going to have a fifth. If all of these people get in, and I'm not sure they will, I don't think Shekarchi actually will get in. I don't even know that Nerona gets in. But let's keep it in this four-way conversation. I think you're going to be looking at a fifth. I can give you a couple of names. One would be Seth Magaziner. Seth Magaziner wanted to be governor. He didn't want to run for Congress. He was kind of forced into that scenario when there was the special election, when Jim Langevin announced his retirement and there was going to be a special election. And look, in the previous gubernatorial primary, folks and Magaziner were bumping into each other in the fundraising space and in sort of the coalition building space. And it was a backroom type of conversation. I don't want to say deal, but it was a backroom conversation that led to, hey, folks is going to take on McKee and Seth is going to go and run for Congress. Now, you all know that the whole controversy, Seth living outside of the district, that he's going to rent a house or buy a house inside the district. Who cares, first of all? But then they just kind of let it go. They said, you know what, we're actually not going to move to the district. We're going to stay where we are. It's absurd. His wife works up in Boston. They want to stay where they're currently situated. They don't want to move to Cranston or something like that. So I think Magaziner might be a play here. And I think if Magaziner gets involved in this thing, that 40.6% of people who say they're not sure shrinks to closer to 25%. I think Magaziner can gobble up, not that he has the most incredible name recognition ever, but I just think that there's a way to position Magaziner as, here's the guy that sort of hybrids a lot of the things that are good and strong about the Democratic candidates as we currently look at the roster or potential roster. And also here's some fresh energy, right? So I think there's that. I think there's other people as well that might get involved. I don't know if there's anybody credible that can get involved in running for governor at this stage. But that's where I think this thing opens up into a new place. Other people who are, again, don't give me the random guy you never heard of before, the business, he was the CEO of this, Textron, I don't know, whatever. Don't give me that. I'm talking about actual political figures who have some level of name recognition, experience, party affiliation, and know the business. They know the business of how to win. They know what to do. They don't want to call into Tara Granahan, go on PRO. They know when to go on with Nisi and White, do that stuff. They know when to come here on B-Town. Whatever it is, they know the business. You get that, and somebody with a fresh perspective, and somebody who can energize people. When I see 40.6% of people responding to a URI poll about who you'd vote for governor in a hypothetical Democratic primary, and they say, I don't know. Does that tell you that people are feeling inspired? Because it certainly doesn't tell me that. Really interesting stuff, okay? And the whole poll is available online. It's just go to uri.edu, or the best thing to do is just probably search new URI poll, and you'll get it. And look, the big issues here are also, I think, really important to note, okay? Really, really important. And here's what the breakout of that is, okay? Healthcare at 62%. Big issue. Come on, let's be honest about it. Our healthcare system on a national level is a disgrace. Here in Rhode Island, we've seen significant shortages of doctors. We've seen significant shortages of dentists. There's specific reasons for this, which are frankly usually tied to reimbursement rates. But there's been also all kinds of weirdness around hospital mergers, hospital closures. COVID vaccine took a little bit of time to figure out how they're going to cover that for people. So overall, healthcare, it makes sense that would lead the way. Right behind it is housing at 51%. Housing is a disaster nationally, and it's an embarrassment here in Rhode Island. Let me tell you guys something. I think I mentioned this. I can't remember if I mentioned it on the radio or the podcast, but so I live in Providence, and I really love where I live. I really love my space. We've talked about this a million times, but it's a loft. It's a work-live space. I make some sacrifices to be here, and I get a lot out of it. All right, and I got a ton of space. We could do our events here. I do the podcast here. I do my music stuff here. We do everything. It's great. Place is awesome. And quite frankly, I got a letter a couple of weeks ago saying the building's going to be sold. Now, I don't have any timeline on this. I've done a lot of research. I've been working with contractors trying to get an assessment of what this is actually going to be. But I've been through this scenario, in the past many times, in New York in particular, and I've had it happen to be in Newport as well, where it's like, surprise, okay, you guys have the artist class has done their job. Here comes the gentrification class. It's time. And I've been on that train before, and it sucks. I don't know how long I've got to be here at the loft. It's not really that big of a discussion. I'm hoping that we can stay here for a while, and I think we can. I think it's going to take a while for this process to go through. But in the meantime, I had started to look out there at other options for me to live here in Rhode Island, and I was embarrassed for the state. I knew the housing crisis was bad. We've done so much work on it, but when you start to actually put your own, body and blood into the scenario, you go, whoa, okay, you want me to pay $2,400 to live in a studio apartment in Pawtucket? That's one option. And there's that. It's all right, but geez, at the end of the day, guys, it's Pawtucket. Why wouldn't I live in Boston or New York if I'm going to start paying, that kind of significant rent? Now, what about buying a place? What do you want, a fixer-upper, a jalopy in Johnston? Yeah, you want that? Come on, please. Even that's barely affordable. And then you start looking at places in and around the city of Providence. You got smashed radiators and dumps that are barely affordable, and anything nice, you can't even imagine it. Come on, please. I'm not a doctor here. I don't have a trust fund. So the housing crisis on an acute level, for me, it's already been one of my, if not my biggest issue in this state. And I think we've got a real big problem. We've talked for years about Airbnb, and my take on that, which is that Airbnb is selfishness. All right, you got an Airbnb, you got a room in your house, maybe you got a 3-family unit or a 3-family house, and you rent a couple of them out as Airbnbs. All right, you can do that if you want. It's not much different than Ubering. But we got these characters down in Newport, especially out in Warwick, all over the place, that buy a bunch of buildings, sometimes up to 50 of them, and they turn them into illegal micro hotels. They're laughing their way to the bank. Meanwhile, you're getting stuck paying $2,400 to go live in a studio apartment in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. So I think housing is a disaster, and I think most people know that, especially as their kids are starting to move away and go other places. And they're like, why would I be here? Hasbro doesn't want to be here. Hasbro took a look around and said, you guys didn't show us a compelling reason to be here. So we're out of here. And people are looking at this, younger people, and they're saying, we're out of here. You know, you go down to PVD Fest, you're faced with a huge amount of disappointment. You know, food trucks pulling away at 9, 10 p.m., a couple of random things here and there. You don't feel like you're part of an arts and creative culture, super sector or community. Disconnection, right? That is fueling the housing crisis as well because people are becoming disillusioned. I don't have data on this. You just feel it. You just know it. The third big issue, building and repairing roads and bridges. 41% of respondents say that that's their number one issue. I mean, that's a surprisingly low number when you consider the Washington Bridge and the traffic that we've had all summer as the state has been undertaking projects in Warwick and all over the place. I mean, you literally feel like you're living in a traffic nightmare. Education, 35%. Well, that should be higher because we've got major problems. For the most part, even our best performing districts are below our neighboring Massachusetts and what we should be doing. And also, as you'll hear this week on Bartholomew Town and my conversation with Ted Dintersmith, and as you heard last week on Bartholomew Town, my conversation with the professors who are stewarding the URI Honors Colloquium on reimagining education, we've got to do just that. We've got to reimagine education. Instead, it is like a sinking ship where you're plugging the holes. About a third of the state says that's the top issue, and it is a huge issue, and it contributes to all the other ones as well, especially economic development. I mean, who the hell wants to move a company somewhere when the schools stink? And the schools don't stink on the whole. We've got a lot of great things happening here, a lot of great teachers, a lot of forward-thinking administrators, and certainly a lot of great students. But boy, do we have problems as well. Let's be honest. 26% say aid to the poor. You can call that the unhoused crisis, which we've done a bad job managing. We've got to do a way better job this year. Will we? We'll see. Best thing that happened last year was the Miguel Sanchez and company pop-up homeless shelter at City Hall that they did, the Defiant Act there. There was an anarcho-syndicalist Bushwick Cafe style homeless. It was an anarcho-syndicalist DIY venue, Bushwick style pop-up homeless shelter at City Hall. It was a beautiful and effective thing. It's the best thing anybody did when it comes to the unhoused crisis in terms of just sticking up a middle finger and saying, we're just going to handle this ourselves. If you guys can't do it, you want to have big administrative paychecks, you want to have organizations and studies, how about this? People are going to lose their digits if they stay out in the cold tonight, or they're going to die. So we're going to open up City Hall and turn it into an unhoused shelter. 21% say protecting the environment. I don't know if that's coded for wind turbine stuff, but clean energy at 9%. I mean, most people don't care about it. They should. We all should. I mean, the planet's burning. 3 generations from now, we're going to have major problems that are going to be every day apparent. We already start to have them. We have a climate emergency. But when you take a look at all the problems the state's facing, you can understand why clean energy might not be top of mind. 93% of people, and again, I'm reading from McGowan's summary here because he did such a great job. 93% of people said the housing costs in the state are a problem. 72% say that they support some form of rent stabilization. McGowan notes that the Providence City Council is planning to unveil a rent stabilization proposal before the end of the year. Of course, Mayor Smiley is totally opposed to rent stabilization, rent control of any kind. That's something you would expect would be a major pivot point. If I'm David Morales, that's probably the number one thing I'm running on is rent control. All right, so that's where we're at right now. Again, welcome aboard. Welcome to the season. 'Tis the season to be jolly if you like Rhode Island politics because it's happening. And I think we're going to have an interesting race. Now, the last thing, I talked about this on the Charlie Kirk recap episode, if you will. I don't know how else to describe it. I was just sort of expressing my feelings on what is just a really sad day and a really sad reality of political violence in this country. I don't even know what else to say about it besides what a depressing reality. But in that, I talked about how the mudslinging of this campaign, that might have been a little over the top, a little emotional. Like, I get it. We're going to have negative campaigns. It's just the business we live in. We don't live in the 100-acre woods here. This is not going to be Winnie the Pooh versus Tigger in a joyful type of race with Eeyore sneaking in as sort of that underdog last-minute candidate, the dark horse, if you will. And this is real deal. We get it. But I just hope the tone of this race isn't stupid. I mean, please. I really do. I mean, like I said, all the people involved are good people. They're all good humans. They all have weaknesses, and we all have weaknesses. But I really can't stand to sit here, even a year out, and think that this race is going to come down to Bonanno Folks says McKee's a moron because of how he handled the bridge, and he's a nice guy, but he doesn't know what he's doing, which was kind of the shtick last year. And meanwhile, you've got McKee saying that Bonanno Folks is a drug dealer and she poisoned the community with opioids willfully, or however you want to put it. They got this whole She Knew campaign out there. I don't know how much they paid for that. It will not hit big time. They think it's a big swing for the fences. I think it's going to fall flat, and they're going to have to pivot very quickly. You know, last time when Bonanno Folks almost beat McKee, she came real close. She likes to say, well, I won on election day, but we lost in the mail ballots. What are you running? I mean, that's a Republican commentary right there, if there ever was one. No, you lost. But last time, McKee, he was very tepid with using the opioid crisis stuff. One, because they need to protect the state's relationship with CVS up in Woonsocket. You know, he's already kind of gotten into a tit for tat with CVS this go around. He doesn't need that after Hasbro. There's a little bit of that, but it's also kind of a dirty play, right? So you know Dr. Luis Daniel Munoz, he's run for governor a couple of times, one as an independent, once as a Democrat. Smart kid. I don't want to say kid. He's like my age. He's a smart man. He's a medical doctor and smart guy, right? Has no campaign infrastructure, unable to raise money, unable to make any sort of dent, had to deal with Matt Brown as the progressive candidate in there, gobbling up all that because Matt Brown had money. But Munoz, you know what he did? He was the guy on the stage last year that said, Bonanno Folks' ties to the opioid crisis are significant and ought not be ignored. And as a result, McKee, as I understand it, and I'm pretty confident this happened, fought for Munoz, who was polling very low, under 10%. They fought for him to be on the debate stage because they said, well, you know what? We like Munoz up here because he's willing to go after Bonanno Folks on the opioid stuff and on the pharmaceutical industrial complex stuff. So McKee can just kind of sit back, have a sip of water, and let them go at it on that in that department. This year, Munoz might get it, he might not, doesn't matter. The problem is going to be voter fatigue. So now McKee, they've come out swinging, they've come out early. Ashley Kalis, who ran as a Republican last year, got crushed by McKee. Now she's floating. Maybe she's going to run for lieutenant governor as a Democrat. Who knows what's going to go on there? But Kalis, actively on social media and on talk radio, also pounding folks on the opioid stuff. Now, one, you'll get some people who they are kind of half listening and they'll go, oh, yeah, Helena Folks, isn't she the druggie? Isn't she the person who, if you have any connection to opioid deaths, which I certainly do, many people in my life have succumbed to the opioid crisis. I find it one of the poxes on our society, no doubt. But when I look at Helena Folks, do I think opioid crisis? I don't know. I think corporate. I mean, every corporation has some kind of tie to a world that we don't want to live in, right? I mean, that's the push and pull. If you want to live in a hyper-capitalist society, you're going to have corporations. I mean, it's not all again, Fred Rogers is not walking through that door, riding the miniature trolley in to be your governor here. This is a big business, corporate type of environment. And so to single out folks on the opioid stuff, it could become very fatiguing, I think, to voters over and over again. If that's the only thing that they're going to do, or the primary thing they're going to do over in the McKee camp to pin folks down, she's going to have problems. Even if she's getting hit from all different sides. She's getting hit from Kalis, who hasn't announced anything, but she's all over social media and talk radio, pounding folks on opioids. Now McKee, she knew that she was causing opioid deaths in this community. That's going to get fatiguing. So they're going to have to come up with a different strategy entirely and use the opioid stuff as sort of the drop the bomb when it's time. Here's what folks has got to do. I'm going to give you 3 things right now that Helena Bonanno Folks, who came close in 2022, here's what she's got to do. Number one, it's going to be very difficult. She's got to hope McKee drops out and that she can get the major labor unions. Or somehow McKee continues to plummet in polls, public perception, something goes awry with a Washington Bridge or another major scenario, and the labor unions, Sabatoni in particular, LaUna, Patrick Crowley, and all those guys, they say, our people are now behind folks. We're pulling our support from McKee. This is very, very unlikely. It is very unusual to even consider it, but it is a possibility, and I think it's on the table right now. Folks did not have labor last time. She came, 3,000 votes short? If she had labor and McKee didn't, we would be talking about Governor Helena Folks right now seeking re-election. That's number one. Number two, last go around, Helena Bonanno Folks, I think about, remember there was that big rally at the State House after Roe v. Wade was ostensibly overturned. That's the one where I was there and I caught the Providence Police senatorial candidate punching Jen Rourke in the face on video, that whole brouhaha, that whole scenario, that rally. I remember being on the stage, if you will, up on the steps of the State House, where you had all the political leaders, all the nonprofit leaders, all the activist organizations up there. Everybody was giving speeches, kind of huddling and so on and so forth. And Folks was there. She was wearing jeans and a sweater. And she was standing around like, when you go to an event and, you get there and everybody knows everybody, but you don't know anybody. You might kind of know somebody and you're just kind of milling around trying to figure out how am I going to attack this situation? Do I want to just be aggressive and get in there and can I be funny? Am I going to be the weirdo? Like, do I want people to approach me? You're kind of running that gauntlet in your head. That's what Folks was doing. She was standing on the outskirts, really didn't have a connection to anybody. Nobody knew who she was. If they did, they didn't make any. It just was a weird thing. She was an outsider. And she always felt like kind of an outsider and kind of a mercenary when it comes to the activist organizations and the action organizations, the nonprofits, and sort of the on-the-ground type of governmental operations. She didn't feel part of that. She felt very mercenary in nature. This go-around, she's been out there, man. I mean, she's been attending RIPTA meetings. She's become more familiar on the ground, at least, to a lot of the people, not just in her sort of orbit of corporate wealth, Democrat, neoliberalism, right? She's trying to go out there and sell it that, hey, I've got my act together, and I hear you, I understand, even though I will ask her when she's on, how many times have you ridden the bus around Rhode Island? Does she have a real understanding of that situation? Probably. Who knows? I doubt it. Maybe she loves the bus. I doubt it, though. Whatever the case is, she's doing what she can to make herself known at that level. She's going to have to do more of that and continue to do that and use the fact that she's not in an elected office and that she's not working doesn't seem to have a job other than running for governor. She's going to have to spend even more time on the ground, and she's going to have to get into the nitty-gritty details and show up at places where she may not be welcomed or at least initially celebrated upon arrival. I think she needs to find a way to court progressives, to court people in the DSA, to even court some independent conservatives and some Republicans to say, hey, wait a minute, folks, I am maybe not your dream candidate, but I'm the better candidate. I'm not the guy or the person, pardon me, that's going to go in there and give you everything you want in your government. But in the meantime, I can be that stabilizing figure, right? Just like on a national level. Hard to imagine going from a Trump MAGA administration pivoting to some kind of DSA progressive adjacent administration in 2028. You need that sort of transition. The pendulum can't move that quickly. Somebody in the middle. This is someone else we're going to talk about that somebody super close to me and I've been talking about. I'll leave it right there. But there's no question that we need that here in Rhode Island. It's hard to imagine a progressive can swing in and have the kind of success that a Bonanno Folks could, just in terms of dollars and in terms of the ability to actually get the machine behind her, right? So I think that's something she's got to do. And if she does that more, that's going to help her cause. Number 3, she's got to own her mistakes. Hudson Bay, where she was the CEO, kind of going bankrupt. The CVS stuff, they got to find a way to just, instead of dodging it, they got to find a way. I don't know what it is, but they got to find a way to package up that situation and say, you know what, here's what I learned from that. Here's what I learned from that. And I'm going to own the things about me that aren't that well received by most people. I'm willing to sit here and say, you know what, I screwed up. I made a mistake. And if she's able to do that, she can humanize herself in a way that I think a lot of people, regular, everyday Rhode Islanders would say, McKee says she's responsible for the opioid crisis. I mean, that's not fair. Did you hear her the other day? She said, geez, I was at CVS and, here's what I learned from that. I'm not saying I'm totally here's what I learned being in corporate America. Corporations suck because of this. How about that? She needs to look at Michael Bloomberg, and I'm going to give you Michael Bloomberg round 1. Bloomberg first campaign. There was a great moment in the debate, the first Bloomberg candidacy that I was listening to on WCBS News Radio 880. when I, like, again, total nerd, why in the world is a high school kid laying down on the floor listening to AM radio debates of New York City mayor? We can address that maybe later. Perhaps there's an explanation. But the reality is, I remember when the question about weed came up. And somebody was, I can't remember who was moderating it. The moderator said, have you ever smoked marijuana? And people are giving the dumb answer, oh, no, never. I'll never forget it. Bloomberg said, yeah, I've smoked marijuana, and guess what? I liked it. And I think we have a criminal justice system that is not handling marijuana appropriately, and our city needs to do better. And by the way, we have so much other stuff to worry about, and it's New York City. Are you kidding? Like, yeah, people smoke marijuana. Like, wow, oh my God. And like that moment humanized him in a way that a lot, to me anyway, my perception, I think a lot of people's perception was that, okay, this guy might be Mr. Corporate, but he's also like, he gets like how people think, like he gets like basic little issues. And I'd love to ask that question to all of them. You know, have you ever smoked marijuana? Bonanno folks. Have you ever smoked marijuana? McKee. Have you ever smoked marijuana? Maybe they haven't. I actually don't care if they have or haven't. That's not the issue. The issue is, how do you answer a question like that? And it's a little easier now that it's legal and it's 2025 than it was in 2002 or something. But here's the thing. She can humanize herself by owning her mistakes and just being real. She does those three things, McKee's got a problem. She's got to do all of them, in my opinion, for McKee to have a real problem. Or McKee has to experience more trauma in terms of the bridge, whatever. I think this polling, that 40% unknown or a 40% undecided, I think that can be filled very quickly by a magaziner-like person. Somebody that comes in and says, hey, guys, you sick of this already? Because I am. People yelling and screaming about, who poisoned the community with drugs, who knocked down the bridge. I mean, how about this? Let's get some fresh people. I'm 20 years younger than these people. I've been in Congress. All right. I was state treasurer. I mean, let's be honest. I'm not, I'm not exactly a working class hero, but you know what? I get a little bit. I'm living in Rhode Island. I'm doing the thing. And here's something fresh. Let's focus on something else. Let's just not focus on the same old stuff over and over again. Let's shake it up and get people motivated, because nobody's motivated. When you see 40% don't care, that's because 40% of people that were polled out of 500, admittedly, but 40% of people don't care. They're not that into it. And who can blame them? They're just not that into it. All right, so that's the governor's race. We'll certainly keep an eye on it, and I'm excited about this year. I'll have some announcements of my own as well coming up on my own involvement in politics. I'm going to leave it there, but I'll have some stuff for you on that as well. I continue to get asked by the media, mostly. It's not like many people are texting me privately about this, but the media, Channel 12 and others, they're constantly asking me, what are you doing? Are you going to run for lieutenant governor or not? I'll have an answer for you pretty soon. And it's, it means a lot to me, actually, just to be in that conversation, means a lot to me. And I appreciate the fact that we've been able to build a reach here on this show and through WPRO and everything, that's not a joke. Right. And I've been hearing from you guys as well on this, not so much, oh, you're going to run, but here's what I think could be an interesting approach. And here's what a lieutenant governor could do to benefit this state. I love those conversations because they're informative and they will affect my journalism and analysis based on what I'm hearing from you. So there's that. One last thing I want to say on this episode. And again, coming up this week, there's a person outside that I hope that was not a person. I don't know if you heard that. It's one of the most shrill sounds I've ever heard. And I'm hoping it was a drill and not a person or cat. Jeez. But here's the last thing I want to say. Look, different topic. Sinclair Communications or Media, whatever the hell they are, they own Channel 10. We all know them. They're the boogeyman. They had they had all their anchors read the same defending democracy propaganda stuff a couple of years ago. Remember that? The breathtaking punch in the gut as Frank Coletta delivered a 1984 style propaganda message on behalf of Sinclair. Sinclair's got problems across the board. TV news has got problems across the board. We know that. We're lucky that here in this market, we've got some strong stuff still, no question, at least on the individual level of journalism. And we've got some corporate leadership that values and understands the role not only that local news plays in our lives on a mission basis, which is really in a perfect society where it would be, but also on a money-making basis. They're not stupid. ABC6 WLNE, New Bedford, Providence. Notice that it's a New Bedford flagged station first. Providence is the secondary, quote-unquote, aspect of the market share, whatever. They've struggled forever, right? They had some good stuff going in the early 2000s. Jim Hummel was on there, whether you paid for it. Larry Estefa was on there. Kristen Welker came through there. Now she's hosting Meet the Press. I mean, there's been all kinds of good stuff that's come on there. And they found little pockets to explore as well with college sports. They did a great job. Ian Steele and Nick Coit and those guys over there. They've done a good job of kind of carving out their own identity. Remember when Cooley left Providence and went to Georgetown? There was an introductory press conference. Ed Cooley, former Providence Friars men's basketball head coach, left Providence College, went to Georgetown. Unusual move for a coach in conference to go to another conference team. They had the introductory press conference at Georgetown, and ABC6 flew down and covered that. And that was a great moment for them. That's the kind of stuff that separates, at least on a day-by-day basis, a newsroom from another newsroom. They were the only ones down there. But nobody's watching. Nobody's watching ABC6. And as a reporter, I see the work that these kids put in. And they're kids. They're getting paid like poverty wages. They're out there, multimedia journalists, 3, 4, 5 stories. They're always late to events, scrambling in, a little bit dated equipment, doing the best they can. And I always thought that they were punk as hell for that. And then they tried to unionize, and they did, and they got nowhere with Standard Media, the owner of ABC6, union kind of busting attitude over there, and just a crummy little, ugly little media company that, again, they got a product that nobody watches because they don't invest in it, but journalists doing good work. And every now and then, I don't check ABC6 as I'm sourcing for the day, for the podcast or for the radio show. It's not like I go to ABC6. I mean, I'm looking at the Globe, the Projo. I'm looking at Channel 12, sometimes 10's website. Sometimes go local, all the local papers, the Valley Breeze, Newport This Week, Newport Buzz. I'm looking at Westerly Sun. I'm looking at all that stuff. I'm looking at Alquist. I'm looking at EcoRI News. I'm looking at Rhode Island PBS, sometimes Publix Radio. I'm not looking at ABC6. I'm not. But I still know that they're doing good work. And I know that every now and then I get sent a story or I see something and I go, oh, cool. You guys, hell yeah, man. You guys are, I love you guys. Right? Well, they got bought by Sinclair. And now Sinclair will own 2 TV stations in the market, both Channel 10 and Channel 6. So what does that mean? I don't know. They're laying off people at Channel 6. Kelly Bates, formerly of Channel 10, she the meteorologist and sort of just a well-liked character on local television. She's out of a job. Others are as well. I think Nick Coit, I saw, ABC6 sports guy. Nick Coit, he's out. And there's not really anywhere for these people to go. That's the big thing. When people are losing their jobs in media, you have all the buyouts at the Projo last week. You got buyouts at NPR and Rhode Island PBS. Where do you go, right? Some of them will successfully launch digital initiatives. Some of them will leave the market and go somewhere else. Some of them will become PR people for, insurance companies or whatever. Maybe they'll teach at an adjunct level at different colleges and things like that. Many of them will start second careers. Some will struggle and live a life of poverty because they're not able to find their footing. That's a reality when you have bloodbaths in media. And here's hoping everybody makes out really well and is not only able to survive and make money, but also is able to thrive and do the beautiful work that they've done in their respective platforms in new places. But we're better when we have more local media of quality. We're not better when we have garbage. A couple of these clowns that run around, they got an Instagram account, they're on community radio in Woonsocket, liars, thieves, and charlatans. We're not better because they're out there. They're a distraction. But when a kid from ABC6 is driving around, flooring it in that car, in the ABC6 car, remember channels 10 and 12, they got their vans. They're blasted it in a car. They're carrying the camera themselves. They're badasses, yo. And I don't know if that newsroom continues. I doubt it does. I wouldn't be surprised if Sinclair used that ABC6 to rebroadcast some Channel 10 stuff and to air infomercials, whether it's infomercials like the Studio 10 road show type of thing where you've got paid programming. Oh, good, this guy wrote a book. Well, it's, however many $100 you come on, you talk about it. Okay, let's go check out the ice cream festival here. Whatever it is, like that might be it. It might just be straight infomercials, kind of mimic what they did with New England cable news in the past, like just rebroadcast the latest Channel 10 newscast over and over again, shuffle around some daytime programming. I bet ABC6 will drop their ABC affiliation. They will stay on Cox. Why? Because Cox Cable actually is the thing that funds. The relationship with cable TV is actually what funds ABC6 in a sustainable way. So there's that. But I just want to say that I'm really sorry to see all the people who are losing their jobs in local media. And I'm sad to see ABC6 go away because I had this vision that they would unionize and that they would actually become a dominant player in new media. I thought that ABC6, with the right leadership and a corporate supervisory level that said, you know what, we're going to take a little bit of a laissez-faire approach here. I thought that they could become something fresh, something new. I thought that if you look at New York One, the station New York One, even Pix 11, not the NBC, CBS affiliates, but these sort of second-tier TV stations that have a dominant role in the New York City media ecosystem. I thought that there was a model there. I thought that there was a model from some of the public media consortiums around the country that could have been applied in a commercial context where you had a podcast /TV / social media digital presence that was holistic. I thought they could have renamed the whole thing, given it a snappy name. I think that they could have dropped using a lot of the cameras that they had and gone to iPhones. And I'm not talking about little miniature TikTok mics. I'm talking about CNN and cable TV style use of technology to elevate the product in a cheap way. And it is cheap, but it works and it's effective, using Zoom or Riverside or whatever platform to do a more digital, contemporary, and sustainable type of thing. I thought that they could have done more audio stuff. I thought that they could have put out something like WBZ Radio's The Loop, which is a 3-time-a-day, 5-minute headline podcast that nobody seems to want to do around here. Maybe we'll do it ourselves. Anyway, if you gave me ABC6 for 18 months, I'm not saying we would have taken down Channel 10, but I'm telling you right now, we would have done something real cool. And it makes me sad that somebody in this environment here, I'm not saying me, but somebody like that couldn't step in and reprogram the whole thing to become something fresh. And those kids work their butts off. Those kids work their butts off. And so to ABC6, which in its own way carved out an identity, I salute you. I'm sad to see this shift happen. I hope that everybody is okay. I doubt that you're going to get very much money from Sinclair to retire or step aside or severance or whatever. I hope that every duck is in a row, and that if it is not, that you take legal action to get the money that you deserve. And I hope that Channel 10 and Sinclair and the whole operation does some innovative stuff with the property and not just put on a bunch of garbage. But I think they're probably just going to put on a bunch of garbage. That'd be my guess. And look, Channel 12, they've got secondary properties. They've got My RI TV. It's where Dan York used to have his show, and a couple other things here and there. So the model in TV, I don't really know all the inner details of it, but I just know that it is a shifting model. It's in crisis, but we still need it. People still watch it. It's like radio. Like, guys, I'm Mr. Podcast, supposedly. People tell me that. I still work in radio 5 days a week. I can tell you right now, people are listening to the radio. You think they're going to put on 92 Pro FM with a full sales staff, a full on-air staff, promotion staff, and everything that goes into it if nobody's listening? You think that WPRO is going to have a from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. live local format with news and talk and weekend programming. If people aren't listening and advertisers aren't going, yeah, here's a pile of money. So it's still out there. So we need to make sure we protect the quality of these media organizations. And more than anything, we just need to protect journalism on a local level. Again, it's a sad reality that we're seeing this shift. It's a sad reality that corporations have a dominant role in all of this. And there's not really anything that we can do other than support the journalists and the entertainers that we want to see elevated. And I hope very much so that for those who have lost their job at ABC6 in particular, but also those at NPR and PBS and the Providence Journal, and others, by the way, recently at WPRO, you may have noticed that, Steve Klamkin, others, I don't know what comes next. I don't think everybody can start a Substack. I don't think everybody can start a podcast. I don't think everybody can start an Instagram or TikTok account and expect to be able to compete and have a career out of it at this stage. But there's got to be something, right? There's got to be some better format for all of this. Nobody's getting, a couple of people are getting rich. I mean, the big names in local media, they're not getting rich, but they're, they do all right. They can go on vacation to Italy or whatever it is. They a couple of times a year talk about the fancy shoes and suits they've got, a couple of cars, the whole thing. But nobody's getting rich either, So kudos to ABC6 though for being kind of a little engine that could. You've always inspired me. Like I said, I'm not going to lie and tell you that I've followed your coverage every day. I don't have time. But when you guys are doing something that's innovative and separate from everybody else, you're damn right I'm there. I'm with you all the way. You're damn right I am. And I'll miss you. If ABC6 is not out there anymore, we're all worse off for it. We're all worse off for it. All right. Okay, McGowan tomorrow. We're going to talk about the governor's race. No, we're not. We're going to talk about maybe we will. We're going to talk about the mayor's race here in Providence. Big stuff there. David Morales getting in on that. I'm sure I'll have David himself, and I'm sure I'll have Mayor Smiley also on this discussion coming up very soon. Some fun stuff as well. We go inside the latest from the Wilbury Theater Group, a really cool event, a really cool show they have coming up that features Bert Kranka, the founder of AS220, co-founder of AS220, and his band. And we talked to Cliff Wood, former director of the Arts Tourism Council here in Providence, and who plays bass in Bert's band. That's all the Wilbury Theater Group that starts that run on Thursday. Plus, again, Ted Dintersmith, really great thinker on a national level and filmmaker when it comes to education. He lives here in Rhode Island. He's had some really interesting thoughts on reshaping and reimagining education. I love that conversation. We taped it last week. It's going to air this week right here on Bartholomew Town, and who knows what else. This is Bartholomew Town, ripodcast.com. Hey, thanks for making us Rhode Island's #1 choice when it comes to podcasts. We appreciate it. We appreciate our sponsors and our supporters at patreon.com/Bartholomew Town, where for as little as $3 per month, you can support this independent journalism and analysis. Okay, everybody, have a great week, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,200 local businesses and nonprofits. And 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our more than 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health and dental insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.